Spectre is the latest James Bond film to have Daniel Craig as the lead role, and this time he has to both save the future whilst dealing with his very troubled past. This time round we get a packed cast with the likes of Christoph Waltz, Seydoux, Dave Bautista, Andrew Scott, Ralph Fiennes, Ben Whishaw, just to name a few, and we have Sam Mendes back at the helm directing again. Now, I've loved all of the Daniel Craig Bond films so far. Quantum of Solace definitely is the weakest one, but Casino Royale and Skyfall are two of the best Bond films ever made. I mean, just they're in a league of their own. So when Spectre was announced, I was a little bit sceptical because Skyfall is my favourite and it is the biggest selling Bond to date, so I was quite sceptical on how they could one-up themselves. However, now that I've seen Spectre, I can say that it is not as good as Skyfall, but it is still a bloody good film. The one thing you might need to know before going into this film is that whereas Skyfall took the typical Bond conventions and flipped them on their head, this one kind of embraces them a bit more. I mean, you still have all the tongue-in-cheek humour, but nowhere near as cheesy as the original Bond films. From the opening scene that takes place at the Mexico Day of the Dead festival, you know you're in for something special. It's really well done. It's one of the best openers to a James Bond film I have ever seen, and it sets the story and the tone of the film perfectly. I've got to admit, all of the action set pieces work perfectly as well. Each one just smoothly runs into the next one and it just works perfectly. And I've got to admit, this is actually probably the most intense and might even be the darkest Bond that there has ever been. Because there are some moments that are kind of hard to watch. You'll know what I mean if you go and see it, but this is probably the most intense Bond is ever going to get. It is directed very well by Sam Mendes, who did a fantastic job with Skyfall, and I think he does an even better job with Spectre. The cast, they're all great for the equal amount of time that they have. Each one has their moment to shine. However, I think that Christoph Waltz is underused. There's not enough development. Well, there is enough development, you just don't see him for much in the film. However, every scene that he's in, he steals. But it just could have done with a little bit more of his character, and it would have elevated his character and the film a lot more. Now, even though this is the longest Bond film ever, there are some elements about it that do feel a bit rushed. Like, they'll get from A to B in one scene and it'll kind of be like, how did they do that again? Also, there are some things that appear just in the film just to move the plot along, which is all fine by me, but it does feel a bit abrupt and just like, oh, they came to that conclusion, okay. One element that I did like about this film is the way that it brings all of Daniel Craig's Bond films full circle. It manages to tie in Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace and Skyfall without feeling forced. It feels perfectly in place and it makes sense. Guys, I enjoyed Spectre a lot. It's fun, intense and quite exhausting to watch at times. Even though it is rushed in places and there's not enough Christoph Waltz, it's still a ton of fun to watch, and it's up there with Skyfall and Casino Royale as one of the greatest Bond films ever. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10, and I really hope you guys go and see it because it's such a good film. So guys, that was my review for Spectre, and for any of you wondering about Easy Targets, it's coming along very nicely. I filmed a couple of scenes and I'm going to start editing very soon. But yeah, that's all I've got to say, guys. Like, subscribe, comment below if you want to, and remember to like my Facebook page, The Media Critic. Bye!